Before the world closed its eyes, before the stars found their quiet places, a gentle story began. It didn't start with crowns or trumpets, but with warm straw, soft lantern light, and a child whose presence could calm even the heaviest heart. This is the bedtime journey of Christ the King, a king who walked softly, spoke gently, and carried a peace so deep it could still storms, heal wounds, and wrap whole villages in rest. As we advance, you will realize why this story carries a peace unlike any other, and why his presence has never stopped comforting the world. Before we begin, subscribe to my channel and drop your location and the time you're watching in the comments. It helps spread God's word to more hearts around the world. Now breathe, relax, let your spirit settle into the calm of this story. The night was calm in Bethlehem, the kind of calm that feels like the sky is holding its breath. Stars shimmered softly like tiny lamps placed by angels, and the moon spread a silver glow over the quiet town. Every home had settled into sleep, every fire had softened to embers, and even the animals shifted slowly as if the world wanted peace. In a small, humble stable at the edge of the town, a warm breath of light flickered gently. The lantern beside Mary glowed softly, casting golden waves across the straw. Mary looked down at her newborn child, the one who had been promised, the one who would be called Christ the King, and her heart filled with a peace deeper than the night around her. Joseph moved quietly, adjusting the manger so the baby rested securely, his movements careful and tender. The child lay wrapped in warm cloth, his tiny chest rising and falling as softly as the wind outside. The stable was not grand, but it was peaceful, filled with a sweet, comforting stillness that seemed to reach into the entire sky. And in that stillness, heaven whispered over the earth, "The King has come." Sleepy sheep shifted in the corner, their slow movements sounding like hushed lullabies. Outside, the breeze carried the smell of fresh hay and the distant sound of shepherds approaching. Every sound was gentle, every movement soft, as if creation itself was tucking the world in for the night. As Mary rested, the soft glow of a star poured down through the cracks of the stable roof. It shimmered across the baby's face, giving him a gentle radiance that seemed to warm the entire room. His eyes were closed, peaceful and unhurried. His tiny fingers curled lightly around the edge of his cloth, as though holding onto the warmth of the moment. Joseph quietly stepped outside to breathe the night air. He looked up at the sky, amazed by the beauty of the star resting above them. Its light spread across the rooftops of Bethlehem, painting everything with calm silver. Shepherds approached slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet hours. Their footsteps were soft, and their hearts were full of wonder. Inside, the stable felt like a sacred sanctuary. The peaceful breaths of the child, the warmth of the lantern, the soft rustle of straw, all blended into a gentle lullaby. Anyone entering felt an unexplainable calm, the kind that makes your eyelids grow heavy and your worries drift away. It was not the sleep of exhaustion, it was the sleep of safety. Christ the King had arrived in the quietest, calmest way. Years passed like gentle waves rolling across a quiet shore. In Nazareth, the boy Jesus grew in a home filled with love, peace, and the soft rhythms of daily life. The mornings began with the smell of warm bread, the afternoons with the laughter of children running through dusty streets, and the evenings with families settling down as lanterns flickered softly in the windows. Jesus grew in wisdom, not with loud voices or grand gestures, but with quiet observation and thoughtful presence. He walked with Joseph to the workshop, listening to the scrape of wood and the rhythm of tools shaping something new. He helped Mary with gentle hands, learning the simple grace of kindness. His eyes carried warmth, his steps were steady, his words, always calm, felt like cool water to anyone who listened. Even as a child, he had a peacefulness that others could feel, a stillness that settled hearts and quieted anxious thoughts. Neighbors often said that when Jesus smiled, it felt like sunlight breaking gently through clouds. One evening, as Nazareth settled into sleep, Jesus sat outside beneath a cluster of softly glowing stars. The warm night breeze whispered through olive trees, brushing over his face as he looked toward the horizon. He was young, but his heart was deep, deeper than any ocean the world had ever seen. He carried a gentleness that brought comfort and a wisdom that felt far older than his years. Children gathered around him, yawning softly as they lay on the grass. Jesus began speaking quietly, telling them simple stories about kindness, forgiveness, and peace. His voice was low and soothing, like a lullaby woven into the breeze. Even the night seemed to listen. As the children drifted into sleep, their breaths slow and steady, Jesus remained awake a little longer. His eyes traced the sky, the same sky that had watched over him on the night he was born. And in that quiet moment, his presence brought a peace that wrapped around the whole village like a warm blanket. Christ the King had grown, not in noise or power, but in gentle strength, the kind that brings rest to weary hearts. Morning approached gently over the Sea of Galilee. The sky softened from deep blue to pale gold, like warm light slowly waking the world. Waves whispered against the shore, each one rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a calm heartbeat. Cool mist drifted above the water, gliding like a soft blanket across the surface. Jesus walked along the quiet shoreline before the world fully woke. His footsteps pressed lightly into the sand, and the breeze touched his robe with gentle hands. Far-out fishing boats swayed lazily, their wooden frames creaking in the hush of dawn. Birds fluttered above the still waters, greeting the day with soft chirps instead of loud morning cries, as if they too sensed the peace in his presence. Jesus paused, his eyes resting on the horizon. The early sunlight reflected across the water like golden threads stretching toward him. It was a serene moment, the kind that makes the mind calm, the heart slow, and sleep feel near once again. Anyone who walked beside him during these early hours felt their worries fade into the wind. As the sun rose a little higher, fishermen began returning from their long night of work. Their boats glided softly toward shore, the water parting peacefully around them. Jesus stood waiting, his expression warm, patient, and welcoming. The air smelled of cool morning waves and damp nets. Fishermen hauled baskets filled with their catch, moving slowly after hours at sea. But when they reached Jesus, something in his gentle presence made them pause. There was no urgency in his voice, only calm. His words carried the softness of the morning breeze. "Come," he invited, "walk with me." And they did, leaving behind the noise of their nets, the weight of their worries, and the restlessness in their hearts. With every step they took beside him, peace settled deeper into their spirits. A small child, rubbing sleep from her eyes, wandered toward the group. Jesus knelt and smiled softly, brushing her hair back with the gentlest touch. Her anxious breath slowed, her shoulders relaxed, and she leaned into the quiet safety he carried. Wherever Jesus walked, rest followed. Later that afternoon, Jesus sat beneath the shade of an olive tree on a peaceful hill overlooking the valley. People came to him slowly, some tired, some burdened, some searching for hope they could not name. They sat around him in soft clusters, like sheep gathering around their shepherd. Jesus spoke in a tone as gentle as flowing water. His words were calm, carefully chosen, and full of kindness. He taught them that God's love was steady, patient, and full of peace. He told them they were never alone, not in their weakest nights, not in their heaviest days, not even in their silent fears. A shepherd stood nearby with his flock grazing quietly. Their slow steps and soft bleats mixed with the warm wind, creating a natural lullaby. Jesus pointed to the shepherd tenderly and said, "As the shepherd cares for his flock with love, so does the Father care for you." People breathed a little deeper. A few wiped tears softly. Mothers rested their heads against their infants. Some lay down in the grass, feeling sleep rest gently on their eyelids. Being near him felt like resting beside a still stream, safe, protected, understood. As evening settled, the sky turned to soft lavender and gold. The crowd slowly drifted home, carrying warmth in their hearts and peace in their steps. Jesus remained on the hillside alone, watching the quiet movement of sheep settling for the night. The shepherd king gazed across the valley where lanterns flickered in the homes below. Smoke rose gently from cooking pots, families gathered around small fires, and children curled up under warm blankets. A calmness rested over everything. Jesus whispered a prayer over the land, a prayer of protection, rest, and light. It flowed through the valley like a soft breeze, touching every home, every weary soul, every frightened heart. Farther down the hill, a shepherd guided his flock into a safe enclosure. The sheep huddled together, their soft wool brushing gently. One small lamb wandered back toward Jesus, as if drawn to his quiet presence. Jesus reached out and stroked its head. The little lamb relaxed instantly, eyes half closing with peaceful trust. And with that small moment of tenderness, the night deepened into a perfect stillness, a holy calm that wrapped the world like a warm blanket. The king watched over his people, just as a shepherd watches over his flock. And in that gentle silence, the valley slept under his peace. The evening settled softly over the Sea of Galilee. Colors of warm orange and fading gold stretched across the sky like long strokes of a heavenly brush. Fishermen were finishing their day, tying knots, folding nets, and pushing boats onto the sand. A cool breeze drifted through the palm trees, carrying the smell of water and wood. Jesus sat on the edge of a small boat, his feet brushing lightly against the calm waves. The disciples stood nearby, speaking in hushed tones as the world prepared for night. Lanterns flickered from scattered homes along the hills, glowing softly like little stars on earth. Jesus looked across the quiet water and said with a gentle voice, "Let us go to the other side." The disciples nodded and began pushing the boat out. The water parted peacefully, making soft ripples that shimmered under the first appearance of the moon. As they climbed aboard and set their sails, the lake was still, calm enough to slow the heart, calm enough to make even the busiest mind grow quiet. Jesus, tired from the day's journey, rested his head on a small cushion inside the boat. His breathing fell into a slow, soothing rhythm, one that made the disciples glance at him with warmth. The king, even in sleep, carried peace with him. But as the night deepened, the winds began to shift. What started as a whisper became a steady push. Waves rose higher, tapping against the wood of the boat, then slapping harder. The sky darkened suddenly, clouds rolling in like thick curtains pulled across the stars. The disciples felt the boat rock. Water splashed over the sides, cold and startling. Fear stirred quietly in their chests. They were fishermen who had known storms, but this one rose quickly, bending the mast and tossing the boat like a leaf in the wind. Lightning flashed, revealing Jesus still asleep, calm, untouched by the roar around him. His peace remained steady, even as the world trembled. The disciples rushed to him, voices shaking. "Master, please wake up. We are perishing." Jesus opened his eyes slowly, the way someone wakes from a deep, restful sleep. His face held no fear, only gentle understanding. He stood, steady even on the rocking boat, and looked at the storm with a calm that seemed to silence the chaos inside their hearts even before the winds abated. Jesus stepped forward, the wind tugging at his robe but unable to touch the peace within him. He lifted his hand, his voice soft but filled with quiet authority. "Peace, be still." The words floated across the storm like a warm blanket. The winds stopped, the waves settled, the clouds dissolved as quickly as they had formed. Silence, deep, complete, soothing, fell over the lake. The disciples looked around in awe, their breath slowing, their bodies relaxing. The air felt washed clean, like a peaceful dream after a troubled night. The boat drifted softly, rocking in the gentlest rhythm. Jesus looked at them with eyes full of kindness. "Why are you afraid?" he asked softly. "I am with you." Their fear melted, replaced by a deep comfort that rested over them like still waters. In that moment, they understood. The king carried peace not only in his words, but in his presence. He brought calm to storms outside and storms within. When they reached the other side of the lake, dawn was beginning to stretch across the sky. A soft glow covered the land like a promise of new hope. People gathered slowly as Jesus walked through the villages. The sick, the weary, the broken-hearted. He touched a trembling hand, and the shaking stopped. He placed his palm over tired eyes, and vision returned. He spoke softly to a troubled mind, and peace washed over it like cool water. Every healing was gentle. Every word was tender. Every moment carried the quiet reassurance that the king was near. Mothers wept softly as their children were restored. Men who had carried pain for years breathed deeply for the first time. Elderly hands reached out just to feel the warmth of his passing presence. One evening, as Jesus walked away from the crowds, a soft sunset followed him. The sky glowed pink and gold, and the hills grew quiet. The world settled under his peace. A peace stronger than any storm, deeper than any fear, and softer than any lullaby sung under the stars. The healing king moved quietly through the villages, and every step he took brought rest to someone's soul. The morning sun rose slowly over a quiet hillside, warming the rocks and soft grass with a gentle golden light. Birds flew lazily across the sky, their wings brushing against the calm morning breeze. Families and travelers climbed the path to the mountain, their footsteps soft, as though they knew they were approaching something holy. Jesus walked ahead, his steps unhurried, his presence calm like early morning dew resting on leaves. When he reached a flat place on the hillside, he sat down. The people settled around him in silence. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the soft chirping of distant crickets blended into a soothing background hum. The hillside felt like a giant cradle, holding everyone in its peaceful embrace. The listeners rested in the grass, some laying their heads on rolled cloaks, others leaning against smooth stones. Even children who normally fidgeted grew still, sensing the quiet beauty of the moment. When Jesus opened his mouth to speak, his voice drifted across the mountain like a warm breeze, gentle, unforced, comforting. "Blessed are the poor in spirit." He spoke slowly, not with thunder, but with tenderness. "Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the peacemakers." Each word felt like a soft hand placed over a troubled heart. The people breathed easier. Their shoulders relaxed. The sound of their own worries seemed to dissolve into the wind. The mountain became a sanctuary of rest, a place where souls were gently healed and minds calmed into stillness. Jesus continued speaking, and every word settled over the crowd like a lullaby woven of hope. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." A woman quietly wiped a tear, but this time the tear did not feel heavy. It felt warm, releasing the weight she had carried for years. A shepherd rested his head on his staff, feeling peace seep into his tired soul. A child curled beside her mother, eyes fluttering shut as the tone of Jesus' voice wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The hillside seemed to breathe with them, rising and falling gently, as if the whole place was alive with calm. Sunlight filtered through drifting clouds, brushing the people with soft warmth. Even the wind slowed, careful not to disturb the sacred quiet. Jesus' words were not loud, but they carried deep comfort. "You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. Your Father sees you." Every phrase brought reassurance. Every sentence felt like a hand smoothing the creases of a worried mind. The people felt safe, truly safe, as though they had laid their troubles at his feet and found a peace that settled over them like a gentle evening sky. Later, after many more days of teaching, Jesus went to a quiet garden on a gentle slope of the Mount of Olives. The night had spread over the land, covering it in soft shadows. The moon hung bright and full above the olive trees, and a cool breeze whispered through their leaves with a calming rustle. Jesus walked deeper into the garden, his robe brushing softly against the grass. His steps were slow, his heart steady, but his spirit carried a quiet weight. The garden was peaceful, very peaceful, but Jesus felt the heaviness of the path ahead. He knelt beside a large stone, placing his hands gently on it. The night air settled around him, cool and soothing, as if nature itself was trying to comfort him. His prayer rose like a soft whisper, "Father, let your will be done." There was no anger in his voice, no fear, just surrender, deep, calm, and willing. The king did not shout. He did not command. He rested his heart in the hands of his Father with the same quiet trust he had taught to others. The garden held his prayer like a sacred secret, sheltered under the moonlight. As Jesus prayed, his disciples rested at a distance. Their eyes grew heavy, their bodies sinking into the grass. The night breeze brushed over them like a lullaby, and they drifted into sleep. Even though they did not understand the moment's weight, the peace of the garden cradled them lovingly. Jesus stood slowly, his expression calm, not free of sorrow, but full of strength. Quiet strength, gentle strength, the kind that doesn't shout or force, but endures with unwavering love. The olive trees swayed lightly. The stars shimmered softly above him. The whole garden seemed to pause as he walked back toward his friends, his footsteps measured and serene. He touched one of them on the shoulder, whispering gently, "Rise, the hour has come." There was no fear in his voice. The king walked into the night with the same peace he had given to the world, a peace that would soon shine brighter than dawn. In the quiet of that garden, wrapped in soft moonlight, Christ the King showed the greatest strength of all, the strength to surrender in peace.